We almost saw the comeback Clips again on Tuesday night against the Dallas Mavericks in Dallas. They trailed by as many as 25, came back to take the lead, but ultimately fell just short. How did the Clippers dig themselves such a big hole, and how did they almost get the job done against the Mavs? Gonna be talking about that on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, 18 seasons a Clipper fan, and going through it right now with the Clips. This was a tough one. Before we get started, remember to subscribe at Locked On Clippers on YouTube, and you can find it wherever you get your podcast. For today's pin question, remember, commenting on the YouTube video is the fastest way to grow the show. Make sure to answer today's pin question, and that is, after a lot of debate on Twitter, if you were a coach, or should I say if you were Ty Lue, how would you defend Luka Doncic? What would your scheme be? Because every time you play the Dallas Mavericks, it really comes down to how you guard Luka Doncic in pick and roll. What are you going to do when various guys get put in the action? How are you going to approach that? Going to be talking about that a lot in this episode, but just overall, why the Clippers fell behind by so much, how they almost won the game, and how they ultimately lost the game. I'm going to get into all of that. As I said, for me, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDropperPod and subscribe to my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, where I do more Clipper content, LA sports content, and vlogs when I go to games as well, including World Cup vlogs coming up. So, by the way, this will be my last episode talking about a Clipper game post-game before I go to Qatar. I'm leaving on Thursday, so I will still be having Locked On episodes out. I just won't be up to date, like after the Pistons game or anything like that, unfortunately. But if you still listen to the content I'm going to put out, I really appreciate it. And I'll be back in no time, and we'll get right back to it. But the Clippers lose this one, a tough one, on a back-to-back to the Dallas Mavericks, 103-101. And obviously, the Dallas Mavericks and the Clippers have a lot of that recent history, played in 2 consecutive years in the playoffs, 2020 and 2021, both of which the Clippers won, I might add. So for anybody, if you're a Mavs fan, by the way, listen to this, shout out to you. But this whole thing about Luka owns the Clippers, he plays great against the Clippers, that's for sure. He definitely has an extra motivation, being that we're the team that knocked him out of the playoffs twice in a row, and the only team that has knocked him out of, actually, never mind. The Warriors did knock him out of the playoffs, so he hasn't only been knocked out by the Clippers anymore, but he clearly has a little something against the Clippers for obvious reasons. But that being said, Luka Doncic goes off against everybody. He's the league's leading scorer right now. At the end of the day, the Clippers are the ones that are 2-0 over the Mavs, and there's a certain guy sitting on the Clipper bench last night in street clothes that has the Dallas Mavericks number, and I think has given some Mavs fans some nightmares that they may still dream about. Anyway, so obviously, as I spoiled right there, if you didn't watch the game, Kawhi Leonard out for another game. Hasn't played since the Phoenix Suns game on opening night in the 3rd game of the Clippers season. But in this game, so Clippers started out with the normal starting lineup that they've been using lately. Reggie Jackson, Luke Kennard, Paul George, Marcus Morris, and Ivica Zubac. For the Mavericks, the starting lineup, 4 of the guys that were part of that starting lineup that went to the conference finals last year with Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, Dwight Powell, and Luka Doncic, with the only difference being Spencer Dinwiddie for Jalen Brunson, who's now in New York. Luke Kennard got injured very early in the game. They said it was a calf strain, so Norman Powell came in immediately for him. So get well soon, Luke Kennard. I know he just came back from an injury as well, so it sucks to see him get injured again. Hopefully he'll be okay, but immediately the first thing I look at when I watch these games against the Mavericks is how are the Clippers going to defend Luka Doncic in pick and roll. And these are the various coverages they threw at him. I actually marked them down because I was paying attention. Luka, I think what's so interesting about him is he's such an experimental player in the games. Like, he will put everybody in the action, say, hey, Reggie Bullock, come set me a screen. Hey, Dwight Powell, come set me a screen, just to see how the Clippers will defend it. And then he'll see which matchup he likes better. So the first one they went to was putting Marcus Morris Sr. in the pick and roll, and the Clippers switched that. And by the way, Paul George started out as primary defender on Luka Doncic, which, I wouldn't say he did an amazing job, but the fact that Paul George, especially coming off a back-to-back, having to carry the offense the way he has to do, played 41 minutes in this game and is guarding the best player on the other team. Like right now, I'm going to criticize Paul George in this podcast because he turned the ball over so much that it cost the Clippers the game. If you want to come out with one takeaway from this game, it's a takeaway that we've had in a lot of Clipper losses this season: turnovers, turning the ball over way too much, and Paul George is the head of the snake in that. And again, as I always say, it starts from the top. You got to look at your best player first. Did Paul George have a bad game? That's up for debate. I think he did a lot of great things, but he turned the ball over in an insane level. 10 of them. Yeah, I'm not kidding. 10 turnovers, guys. 10 turnovers. So when we talk about the actions, though, Luka Doncic being guarded by Paul George, I just admire the effort that Paul George has put in this season, the way he's led this team again. We didn't think this was going to be the case again. We thought Kawhi Leonard would be healthy, but it hasn't worked out like that so far. And Paul George, God bless him, man. The Clippers would not be over 500 without him right now through 15 games. The Clippers stand at 8-7 after this loss to Dallas, but you see Marcus Morris Sr. switched on Luka, got a stop, so they didn't really go to that as much anymore. Then, and by the way, shout out to Marcus Morris Sr., who's played exceptional this season and defensively has really held his own. And in this game, again, he was awesome. 18 points for Marcus Morris, 7 for 11 from the field. 9 of those points came in the third quarter where the Clippers made a huge run and got back in the game. But then, Luke Kennard, before he came out of the game, quick hedge and recover, and plus Luke Kennard was guarding Reggie Bullock, and I know that Luka Doncic wasn't super confident giving it to Reggie Bullock in the beginning of the game, given his recent shooting struggles from three. Him and Dorian Finney-Smith came into this game struggling from three, but, of course it's the game against the Clippers where they get back into the swing of things and start hitting shots. I'm going to get into that more as we talk about the fourth quarter, to what extent they were hitting shots. But the obvious one, although actually, before the obvious one, Reggie Jackson getting put in pick and roll. I figured that would be something that Luka Doncic went to, but he didn't actually go to it that much. And there was one time in the first quarter where they did put Reggie Jackson in the pick and roll, and Reggie Jackson switched onto Luka, and I was like, oh my God, here we go again. But the Clippers double teamed him, hard double team on Luka when Reggie was guarding him, which was good, at least get the ball out of his hands. But the obvious pick and roll action that Luka's going to try to go to a lot, again, it's the Clippers, is putting Ivica Zubac in the pick and roll. And Ivica Zubac in drop coverage this season has been unbelievable. One of the best centers in the league. And he was dropping the first 2 or 3 times they put him in the pick and roll in this game. First time he got a stop on a Luka 3, but it was a 3 that Luka would make, I think 5 times out of 10. And then there was a play where he got around Paul George, and Paul George did a pretty good job of trailing him over the screen, but Luka's just so good, amazing at using his body, and hit a shot off the glass. And then Luka got an and one when Zubac switched onto him, and you saw Zubac come out of the game and was kind of in foul trouble already. So I kind of mentioned it in the Houston podcast that the Mavericks matchup is just tough for Zoo. Luka's just one of the best pick and roll players, not just in the NBA, but that I've really ever seen. And it's just tough for Zoo because he's not a switch everything kind of big. There's only a couple centers in the league to me that can really switch everything and take away that advantage in pick and roll. And Ivica Zubac, who is actually underrated in my opinion, foot speed wise, laterally against certain guards, Luka's just so crafty. He just finds a way to get buckets on basically everybody. And I will say this about Luka. This guy, I don't know if he gets fouled on every play or he looks like he gets fouled on every play, but the man is complaining after every call. Not every call. Every shot. Every shot he takes, he's staring at the ref. It's like, I actually have so much respect for Luka. I think he's one of the best players at this age I've ever seen in my life. But he just complains so much. But ultimately, the Clippers did not start out with a sense of urgency. And at first I thought, it's because it's a back-to-back, but given the second half comeback, the Clippers trailed by as many as 25 points in this game. And for them to come back and actually take the lead, it just shows that they just weren't alert in the first half. I thought that the Mavs looked faster, their closeouts were better, they were, their game plan was more solid in terms of the way they were executing it. And the Clippers just started out cold in the first quarter, even though I thought they were generating really good looks. And, talking about how the Clippers are going to defend Luka Doncic in pick and roll, what I was curious of, and I'm always curious of, is how teams are going to defend Paul George in pick and roll. And what you saw in that game was a lot of hard hedging by Dwight Powell, or blitzing. In today's NBA with the spacing, hard hedging and blitzing doesn't really look that much different. You throw two on the ball handler coming off the screen. And Dwight Powell was making sure he was taking away all those immediate three-point attempts that Paul George loves to get when he comes off the screen pulling up for three. They were doing a good job of that, but I thought Paul George was doing one of two things in that first quarter. Either he was turning the ball over, or he was making a good pass to Zubats in the 4-on-3, and we were getting a ton of good looks. I think Norman Powell got a bunch of good looks, but he was, he missed three of them. He was 1 for 4 in that first quarter, missed three awesome looks. Thought Reggie Jackson got a couple of good looks. Marcus Morris Sr. got a couple of good looks, but unlike the others, Marcus Morris Sr. in the first quarter hit shots. But the Clippers were 1 for 9 from 3 in the first quarter, 5 for 19 overall shooting the ball in that first quarter, while the Mavericks in the first 7 minutes of the game already had a 21-9 lead because they were 4 for 7 from deep. And Dorian Finney-Smith hit 3 threes in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. So that was tough. But the turnovers, ultimately, 21 of them in the game for the Clippers is what cost them the game. I'm going to be talking about what kind of turnovers the Clippers were getting in more depth, especially Paul George, coming up. If you want to share a car or drive a car that you haven't before, check out Turo. Turo, spelled Turo, is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. Ever driven a Ferrari before? Well, maybe you have. Maybe they have availability, the availability to drive one on Turo. Browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., U.K., Canada, and coming soon down under to Australia. Book a spacious SUV or minivan for a family road trip. You can get a classic or luxury car for a special event, birthday, or holiday. You can find affordable economy cars if you're on a budget and just need to get from A to B. You can test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on to see how it fits in your everyday life. I'll tell you what, man, if you've never driven a Tesla, go drive it. That thing stops on a dime, like Shea Gilgeous-Alexander in transition. Many Turo hosts can even deliver the right car to you. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms, conditions, and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars and find your drive at Turo.com. That's Turo.com. Let me tell you something about Built Bar. Built Bar, I actually haven't had one in a while, and that's really made me sad because I really miss the Built Bars to start my day. If you've never had a Built Bar, they're like these chewy, you think of these granola bars, protein bars, kind of tough, kind of hard. These things are chewy like a chocolate bar. They're made with 100% real chocolate, so they taste great. They have 17 grams of protein, so perfect after a workout or before a workout, or if you just can't have breakfast, you can just put in a Built Bar in your mouth and just get that low sugar and 130 calories right there. You got to try these reimagined flavors. Cookie dough topper, coconut brownie bar, coconut brownie topper. The coconut one's actually, I'd say maybe my favorite. I think the raspberry one's probably my favorite so far. White chocolate peppermint granola. It's built to take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. Funny enough, I just talked about how Built Bar is different from granola bars, but I guess they're trying to diversify there. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars, they're literally the best tasting protein bars ever built. Just sink your teeth into that first bite and it'll change your life for eternity. Just get 15% off your order right now by using the code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. That's LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers your first listen today. For your second listen today, check out Locked On Sports Today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. So going back to where the Clippers kind of dug themselves a hole, I think they were having a little bit of trouble with Luka, but, Luka Doncic also averages 12 points in the first quarter, which is the league leader. 12 points in the first quarter. So one thing Luka does a great job of is he puts the imprint on the game right away that, look, I'm the best player on the court. This is my game. I'm going to dictate the pace. The way you're going to win is how you stop me. That's what he does. And, as great as Paul George is, it's kind of amazing that a kid younger than me, I say a kid, but this dude's like a grown-ass man throwing guys around with his shoulder, Luka Doncic, is better than Paul George already, which is just unbelievable how good he is. No offense to Paul George, who's one of the best players in the NBA. But a guy that also came off the bench and gave the Mavericks some spark, I talked about Dorian Finney-Smith hitting open threes, but Christian Wood, he's been awesome offensively this season for the Mavs, that they, a new signing, and he came in, hit a three right away. Also, when the Clippers went small, they took Zubats out of the game at around the 4-minute mark, 4:21 mark. Reggie and Zoo came out of the game. John Wall came in the game alongside Terrence Mann, so the Clippers went to that John Norman backcourt with three wings with Marcus Morris Sr., Paul George, and Terrence Mann. Marcus Morris Sr. at the 5, and it didn't really work. I haven't really been a fan of Marcus Morris Sr. at the 5. Robert Covington and Nico Batum at the 5, a little bit different in that small ball lineup. But Christian Wood got a bucket right at the rim pretty quickly. And the Clippers overall put Zubats back in the game late in that first quarter, and they went to a different approach defensively, switching Zubats onto Luka, and that was it kind of turned out the way it did in the playoffs when that happened. Buckets, fouls, and Zubats in the second quarter got his third foul and had to check out of the game. Clippers lost the first quarter 30-15, so even though they've done a lot better lately in first quarters, just reverting back to their old ways that we saw in those OKC games and in the Phoenix game, in those 3 losses where they were starting out poorly in the first, and it was because they turned the ball over a ton, which brings me to Paul George's turnovers. And I'm gonna actually, I took a note of every single one of them and how he got them, so I'm gonna read them off right now. Number 1 was a wayward pass. It was pretty good defense, but just a pass that should have been more on target. Although the Clippers got a turnover right back. The Mavericks got a turnover right back on the other end of the court, so it kind of canceled out that one. So it wasn't very costly. Number 2, he was one-on-one against Luka Doncic and just slipped. Number 3 was an offensive foul where he went right into Dwight Powell and elbowed him in the chops, where he kind of missed Zubats on a lob on that pick and roll. Number 4, missed Amir wide open at the left wing for 3. He tried a no-look to try to get Luka Doncic to maybe run at Amir and find Robert Covington on the dunker spot under the basket, but Luka didn't bite for it and was intercepted, just a wrong read. And one thing you'll see, Paul George is not a typical point forward, so he's not the best at making those pick-and-roll reads like you say a Luka Doncic or like a LeBron or even you can say a John Wall or John Morant, just a lot of these pick and roll threats in the NBA. And you kind of saw that Kevin Durant kind of struggled with that last year in the playoffs against the Celtics. He's not a typical point forward. He still has improved tremendously making good reads in pick and roll situations, but he's also going to have those wrong reads. Number 5 was this one was like, I think personally, and I know this sounds ridiculous, but if you go back and watch this play, this is the 5th turnover that Paul George had to the 6th one. I think I can make this pass if I have no ball pressure on me by an NBA player. If it's just a wide open pass up top to John Wall and Paul George threw it behind him in the backcourt, like that was as unforced as it gets. Just totally unacceptable from a player of his caliber. Honestly, in my opinion, totally unacceptable from an NBA player, period. And then number 6, an unforced, awful pass intended for Marcus Morris Sr. It just didn't connect. Number 7, he stopped his dribble too early and tried to force a bounce pass to Amir Coffey. What I don't get is when you've already turned the ball over 6 times, why are you taking such risks with your passes? That's just ridiculous to me. If I turn the ball over 3 times, I'm taking care of the ball the rest of the way in terms of my focus on that front. And I think as an NBA player, it should be even more of an emphasis to take care of the ball. Number 8, good hands by Dorian Finney-Smith on a blitz. So Paul George was getting blitzed a lot, as I said, and I think that this one was actually one of the only ones that I thought, just good defense. Paul George tried to pass it over the top when he got blitzed. Dorian Finney-Smith got his hands on it. And then number 9, this was when we were in the 4th quarter, a jump pass when they blitzed him again. Shout out to Dwight Powell, did a really good job of closing down the airspace and taking away his passing window. But what coaches always say, never jump pass, because when you're in the air, you have to throw the ball because you can't come down. And he turned the ball over there, and then they started double teaming him whenever he got Luka Doncic switched onto him. And turnover number 10 was when they double teamed him. He literally just turned the ball over. When Nico Batum was kind of open to his left, he looked to his right, turned it over. So those just can't happen. 21 turnovers. And mind you guys, the Clippers shot 53% from the field and 43% from deep. Now the Mavericks shot 39.5% from 3 and shot 43 threes to our 28. And the Mavericks do a pretty good job of preventing 3-point shots for other teams. But the reason why the Clippers shot such good percentages and still lost the game is because they turned the ball over 21 times to the Mavericks 12. And Paul George had 10 of those turnovers. So that is an Achilles heel right there at times for the Clippers. And Paul George, I am going to take an L on this because I've been saying that I want less Reggie, I want more wings, and we got that in this game. Reggie Jackson averages 29 minutes a game, but in this game he only got 25. And I like that decision by Ty Lue. He went with a more wing-heavy approach throughout the game, and it causes for Paul George to play more point forward. Now you're wondering, what about John Wall? Going to get into him and what great things he did in the third quarter, especially coming up. But Paul George is going to be forced, especially without Kawhi Leonard, to play more of that point forward role. And even though I love seeing him in the mid post and stuff like that, and we only saw him there like once or twice in this game, and one time he did score on it in the third quarter, it does take away chances for him to shoot when he's playing that pick and roll role. Because what you'll have teams do when Paul George is running pick and roll is blitz or hedge. Because if you drop coverage on Paul George and he's walking into mid-ranges and walking into those threes, that's suicidal at times if you're the other team. You want to get two bodies on Paul George coming off screens, and that forces him to get rid of the ball, and that also forces him to shoot less. And in this game, Paul George did not exceed 20 shot attempts. He only shot 13, and he shot an efficient 7 for 13, which sucks because you want to see him shoot 20 shots, but he has nobody to blame but himself with the turnovers. How did the Clippers get back in the game, though, and how did they come up short? Going to be talking about all that coming up. Let me tell you something about BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for your sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. And coming up, there's nothing that's going to be bet on more throughout the world than the World Cup. Obviously, you know me, going to be boarding my plane on Thursday to Qatar. And they're very interesting lines with soccer. The spreads are really interesting. But USA and Wales, the money line is plus 168 for the U.S. against Wales, plus 205 for Wales. If I had to place a safe bet, Argentina is -2 against Saudi Arabia in their opening game on November the 22nd. I would place the bet on that. Considering Argentina is 35 matches unbeaten, I would place a safe bet on them to win and probably win by 2 goals. If you want to go to BetOnline and bet, go to BetOnline and bet. You can get the app or you can do it online. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football, basketball, soccer, and esports. They've got it all on betonline.net. They're the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Just head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. So, the Clippers. Let's talk about how they got back in the game. So, second quarter was very average again. I mean, they lost it 17-24. I thought PG, continued to be doubled. And at times I was like, PG needs to force some shots a little bit. I know that the Mavs like having guys settle for contested mid-ranges, but contested mid-ranges are shots that are in Paul George's repertoire. And I think when guys are cold like that, basically Marcus Morris Sr. was the only one really hitting shots in that first half for the Clips. Also Nico Batum, who had a game in this one, which is also an unfortunate reason the Clippers lost, because after that Houston game on Monday, you'd hoped that would be the kickstart to Nico Batum's three-point shooting that we're much more used to seeing as Clipper fans these last 2 years, because he's been so ice cold to start the year. And in that Houston game, I think he got his confidence back because he shot an unbelievable 7 for 7 from 3 in this game. Yes, 7 for 7. 3 of those came in the first half. You also saw Amir Coffey come in at the 5:37 mark of the second quarter when Zubac's got his third foul. So the Clippers went with a wing-heavy lineup. And then Robert Covington came in shortly after to make it a Nico, Paul George, Marcus Morris, Amir Coffey, Robert Covington lineup. So after a brief John Wall stint, you saw that all-wing lineup, and it just didn't really do much yet in that second quarter. You know what the teams are going to do when the Clippers play that small ball lineup. They're going to switch everything, which means that you got to get the ball to your one-on-one creators and find mismatches. And one thing I was really surprised about in the first half was, why are the Clippers not putting Luka Doncic in the action more? That's mind-boggling to me. When this guy's handling the ball on every single offensive possession, how are you not making him work on defense? And at the end of the second quarter, you saw more of that. And by the way, Darian Finney-Smith made 4 threes in the first half. I don't know about the first quarter, but 4 threes in the first half. Reggie Jackson only played 4 minutes in the second quarter, but the Clippers were 5 for 15 from 3 in the first half, and I thought a lot of those were good looks. But as I said, too many turnovers as a team. But when you saw Paul George putting Luka Doncic in the action, he couldn't guard him. And then sometimes they were doubling, and it just causes open looks. So that's something that they really took into the third quarter, and it was much better. I don't know why they didn't go to it earlier. They were putting Luka Doncic in positions to guard, and there were certain guys he just couldn't guard. He's getting blown by. And the Clippers started the third quarter with John Wall out there. John Wall, Reggie Jackson, which, again, I've been very critical of that combination, but it worked in this game, and I'm surprised that they weren't putting Reggie Jackson in the action more. The Mavericks weren't putting Reggie Jackson in the action more on defense, but I think it's because he was guarding Reggie Bullock for the most part, and Bullock has just not been hitting from three. Now that would change, but I'll tell you how it changed. The third quarter, though, the Clippers had a ton of success, and they started blitzing Luka, just throwing two at him on every screen, and it was working. Getting the ball out of his hands, making somebody else beat you. You saw the Clippers get some stops, and John Wall and Marcus Morris led the way back. John Wall had an unbelievable third quarter. He had 10 points. He led a 16-2 run, and he was just going downhill, getting to the foul line, getting to the basket, kicking the ball to PG, pushing the pace. He had a nice entry pass to Ivica Zubac, hit a mid-range, hit a three-pointer after he airballed a three-pointer on the previous possession. So to have that confidence to shoot that was just really impressive. And the biggest thing that changed for me with the Clippers in that third quarter was their attention to detail and defensive effort. This is when I was looking at the TV and so it wasn't just that we're on a back-to-back. At first I was like, it's a back-to-back. They didn't even show up to play tonight. No. Clearly, they just did not play hard enough in the first half, because if they're capable of playing that way in the second half, they were definitely capable of playing better than scoring 32 points in the first half. That's just not going to get it done. And the main reason that is because of loosey-goosey turnovers and just lack of effort on defense compared to the Mavs. And Marcus Morris Sr. had 9 points in the third quarter. Just what I think Senior's done such a great job of so far this season is when teams are running him off the line, he is so comfortable taking a dribble or two in for that mid-range shot. Honestly, at this point, it doesn't feel like Marcus Morris Sr. is going to miss. When he shoots the ball, it feels like it's going in. As I said, 37 minutes from him in this one, 7 for 11 from the field. He was 1 for 5 from 3, which sucked because just maybe 1 or 2 of those would have made a difference, and he's so good from 3 normally. But when he's shooting 7 for 11 from the field and scoring 18 points and playing decent defense, he's doing his part. But the Clippers in the fourth quarter started with a small ball wing lineup of Norman Powell, Terrence Mann, Amir Coffey, Nico Batum, and Paul George. And Paul George played the entire third quarter, and I think, honestly, he may have played the entire second half. I'm not 100% on that, but he played 41 minutes in the game, which is really impressive, and also more minutes than I think. And I'm always the one that advocates for guys to play more minutes, but he's playing 41 minutes in the second half of back-to-back. I don't know about that. But yeah, he didn't play the entire fourth quarter. So the entire second half. So wow, I mean, Paul George, unbelievable. But you saw him start heating up and just shooting more efficiently. He caught the ball in the mid-post in the third quarter against Finney Smith one time and just rose over the top of him. So even though I want to see the ball, if Reggie Jackson's in the game, I think there should be more Paul George in the mid-post, honestly. Because if you have another ball handler out there with Reggie that's going to run some pick and rolls with Zoo, I don't think you need too much Paul George and Reggie running pick and roll with Zoo. Throw a little bit of Paul George mid-post in there, because I still want Paul George to get shots up. I really still want Paul George to get shots up. I think without Kawhi Leonard, it's more important for Paul to get in rhythm than everyone else. I think, honestly, a lot of times you say you want to get everyone else going, you'll still get yours. Paul George is such a rhythm player. I think when he starts hitting shots in the beginning of games, it just has a chain reaction to everything else. The attention that he ends up drawing opens it up for everyone else in the Clippers, and it actually makes them better. Fourth quarter with that small ball wing lineup, you know what the Clippers are going to do, switch everything, and they were struggling to guard without fouling, but the offense looked good, and they took a 78-73 lead. They did, and again, added defensive intensity. John Wall, Nico Batum hitting threes, Paul George putting Luka Doncic in the action, but they were over the limit with 8 minutes and 23 seconds left in the game, which caused it to be very tough to play defense without fouling. And Spencer Dinwiddie had 2 and 1s against Amir Coffey alone, and 3 and 1s in the fourth quarter. 2 and 1s in the fourth quarter against Amir Coffey alone, 3 and 1s in the fourth quarter total. One of them was against Ivica Zubac. And you saw Reggie Jackson, Zubac, Senior, and Wall come in for everybody but Paul George later in that game. But then you saw Reggie come out quickly for Batum because he was playing so well. So I really like that substitution by Ty Lue. Don't be so Reggie heavy. Like, when he's not playing that great, and in this game he was just okay to me, 3 for 7 from the field. In the first quarter, though, when the Clippers were down by, the Mavericks were building their lead, Reggie Jackson was 1 for 3 with a turnover. He ended up with 2 turnovers, 6 points on 3 for 7 from the field, and 0 for 3 from deep. One of those threes he shot with Dwight Powell guarding him on a switch. I just don't understand that. Shooting a contested 3 with a 7-footer guarding you. That's just low IQ basketball, and that's those are the type of things that Reggie does that makes me want him to play less. And that's not personal. That's just, wanting what's best for the team. If it's Zubac did play his 33 minutes that I said he should average 33 minutes, and it's funny because it felt like he played less in this game just because of the Mavericks being a weird matchup for him. But the way the Clippers started to get burned was in the fourth quarter. Luka Doncic came back in the game, and we're blitzing, but finally those other guys, I shouldn't say finally, Dorian Finney-Smith was hitting all night, but it was Reggie Bullock who just went off in the fourth quarter and broke his little slump by making 4 threes in the fourth quarter. It was just ridiculous. I think one of them he may have been on the line, but he hit 4 threes, or 3 threes in the fourth quarter at least. I'm going to look it up right now, honestly. I want to give you the exact number. But a lot of them were just on Luka Doncic getting blitzed. And, again, you have to give something up, which is why I'm asking the pin question, how would you guard Luka Doncic for the Clippers? Because that was working. That was really working. I think the only thing that really hurt the Clippers at the end of the game, because Nico Batum was still hitting threes. Paul George was still getting some buckets, but what hurt the Clippers was those 2 turnovers by Paul George late in the fourth quarter, and then Luka Doncic and the Mavs just got hot from 3 at the end. When I say Luka Doncic, it's because he hit the dagger to put the Mavericks up 102-98. It was a scramble play. He threw it up from the left wing, just went in. It's just classic Luka. And then the Clippers actually had a chance down by 3 to tie the game. But the Mavericks intentionally fouled when the Clippers were down 3. Nico Batum made the first, missed the second on purpose, and the Mavs got a team rebound, and that was the end of the game. But as far as the Reggie Bullock stuff, let me try to check how many threes he made. Because it looked like he was on the line in that shot chart. I think he made 4 of them. Okay, so he made the first one at 7:21 of the fourth quarter. And then he made another one at 6:06 in the fourth quarter. And then he made another one. 4 of them. All 4 of his threes came in the fourth quarter. So I'm going to read the stat lines now. Clippers lose it 103-101. Again, turnovers were the story of the game. I think that it was still a valiant effort, though. You got to be proud of the fight that they showed. Just wish they could put that together for 2 halves. Clippers dropped to 8-7. Mavs moved to 8-5. Clippers' next game is on Thursday against the Detroit Pistons. They are 3-12, and that game's at Staples Center, so that's a must-win. I know it's November, but it's a must-win to me. Paul George, 23 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 10 turnovers, 7 for 13 from the field, 1 for 3 from deep, 8 for 8 from the line. So you like to see that. But a lot of minutes played for Paul. Shot efficiently. You want to see him shoot more, but he also dug his own grave with that, with the turnovers. Already talked about Marcus Morris. Zubac, 3 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 blocks. Not a great game for him. He had 5 fouls, was in foul trouble. Still played 33 minutes. It was 0 for 2. So it's weird that Zoo this season, rare, he doesn't have a field goal in a game. So you got to shout out to the Mavs defense for that. Luke Kennard, as I said, injured. Nico Batum, 7 for 7 from the field. So that was awesome to see him get going. Hopefully he continues to hit from 3 like that. All of his shots are 3s, and he made every single one. Also had 5 rebounds to go along with his 22 points. And then John Wall, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, plus 11 when he was on the court. He made a couple of bad reads too, though, in pick and roll. Just some rare bad reads. 3 turnovers for him. 6 for 11 from the field. 1 for 3 from deep. 4 for 6 from the line. One thing you got to like about John, he gets to the line. Just want him to continue to make free throws. Shot a little bit better in this one with 4 for 6. Terrence Mann played 15 minutes. He was 1 for 1 with 2 points. Norman Powell, 18 minutes. 2 for 10 with 5 points. I didn't think he shot that badly. 1 for 5 from deep. A couple of those shots in the first quarter could have really helped. But overall, the Clippers shot 12 for 28 from 3, 43%, and still ended up losing because of the turnovers. But remember, guys, I just want to say thank you to all the listeners for the beginning of this season. Supporting me. I know it's been a little tough. It's just a solo host. Just still getting used to this. I will have a green screen behind me, by the way, for all the YouTube watchers. I will have a green screen by the time I come back. I ordered it. It just came in yesterday. So I'm going to have a little bit more flavor to this background. But remember, answer today's pinned question and subscribe to Locked On Clippers. We've already gone monetized. Let's continue to build that number up and surpass other NBA teams. How would you guard Luka Doncic if you're the Clippers coach? If you're Ty Lue, let me know. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DimeDripperPod and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I am going to be posting vlogs in Qatar. It's going to be electric, the biggest sporting event in the world, even if you don't like soccer. If you check it out, I really appreciate it. And yeah, make sure you check out Locked On Sports Today, though. I want to emphasize that. Locked On Sports Today. For your second listen today, from the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Adieu, Clipper Nation. And you already know the age-old proverb. Hopefully they bounce back against the Pistons. And hopefully, fingers crossed, by the time I get back from Qatar, Kawhi Leonard's back on the court. A man can dream. Go Clippers.